As we can see, these are regular stretch cords. And in this case, these are green. And we use this to swim technically outside of the pool. Currently, with the current environment and the current crises, pools are closed. And so a lot of people are wondering how they can replace their swimming with something on land. And there are a lot of strength exercises that you could be doing, but StretchCordz, as you'll see in a moment, gets you about as close as you can from what you're doing in the pool. Now, there's a variety of different colors. Green is the second hardest. I'll show you red in just a moment. There's also yellow and blue, I think. And you might say, well, what is special about StretchCordz? Well, first of all, it's a specific brand, and I'll show you the brand in a moment. But the key here is to understand that this is not just resistance bands, but that when you pull on these, the resistance stays pretty steady throughout. And that's the key. Most surgical tubing is too easy the further it gets back, or resistance bands hit a point where you can't pull on them anymore. They'll either rip or the resistance locks because it's at its most stretchable point. And so that's what StretchCordz are. They came up with these type of bands to allow that to happen. And so what you'll see very soon is that you can use and mimic the swim motion exactly out of the pool as you would in the pool. So you can see the company is called StretchCordz, and they're very specific, and you can see the website on there too. But I will put that on the website for everybody to see if you do want these specific ones. Now, for example, these are the red ones. These are the ones with the highest resistance and the most force required in order to do the true stretch cord motion properly. These have the handles. There's also hand paddles, as you can see, that you can hook up to them instead. And then you would be pulling as if you had paddles in your hand. I prefer the handles because, as you can see, you have a variety of different options on when you're pulling. You can leave your hand open, you can close it, you can put your thumb in, you can slide it to one side or the other side, and I'll explain that in a moment why that's beneficial. Green's a little bit easier than red, so therefore you could do a lot more repetitions with green than I currently am able to with red. Red is a lot more resistance, and I can maybe do 35 to 50 of them at a time. With green, I probably can do 100 to 120 at a time. With yellow, for example, I probably could do 200 or 300 at a time. Just depends on what you need in order to have the proper swim simulation. As you can see here, I have it hooked up behind the door. You can put a lot of pressure behind that, and that is mainly because if you open the door, you can see there's a little hook behind this, and so that locks behind the door, and you can put a lot of torque on that and set yourself up. Now, a lot of times you can also hook this behind the door handle or hinge on the other side, such as this. And similarly, if that lock wasn't there, but in most stores you can do that, same thing, you can hook it up. The important thing is, though, is I like it in an elevated position. If the stretch cords, which I'll show you in a moment, are too low, it doesn't set you up properly in your pulling motion. So I put these back up here, set that up in about the middle, and you can pull pretty hard on these. Now I'm going to sort of go into the stretch cord motion, and I know this is a lot more detailed than many of you are really needing, but it gives you a good idea of what we're trying to do. So again, I was talking from the elevated position. If this were any lower, I would have to bend down so far in order to get this relaxed motion. As you guys can see, the relaxed setting that I'm in, the bands and their resistance, the stretch cords, are holding my arms up. I can just sit here like that, and the resistance of the cords is holding my arms up. So I get into the elevated elbow position, and here's my starting point. Head's neutral, I'm looking straight down, and here I am, ready to start stretch cords. I like my thumbs out, I get situated, and boom. 1, 2, my elbow's nice and high. 3, I'm pulling straight through the channel. 4, why am I pulling straight through the channel? because I'm not breathing, and so therefore I don't need to turn my my arms in like we do when we're swimming. We're swimming as if we're swimming with a snorkel, straight ahead, head in neutral position. We can breathe. We're not in the water. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And you can see, no, we're not doing the full rotation. That's too much pressure on the shoulder, because remember, this is in a resistance mode, and when we're swimming, we're not in a resistance mode here, and we don't want to put that torque on the shoulder. So instead, we pull through, and we come back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so a regular freestyle is just like this. You can see you get a little bit of momentum. Now it gets easier if I step closer. It's a little bit looser, and now this is obviously a lot easier. It gets harder if I step further back. But the good thing about StretchCordz is the resistance stays about the same throughout. It doesn't start hard here, it doesn't start too easy here. It's all about the same power and torque throughout. So I stand about here, and there we go. And a couple hundred of these, and gets you close. Now, you could change techniques. There's a variety of different techniques you can jump through. That is single arm. Just keep those going for 10 or 15 or 5 per side. And again, I'm keeping the elbow nice and high, pulling straight through the channel and back and forward. Or you can sort of do a higher turnover freestyle, one arm forward, one arm back. But again, you are mimicking 100% the way you pull swimming through a channel. The great thing is it's actually a lot more resistance than water. So you're getting a lot more power and torque in your swimming motion. As long as it's fundamentally sound, very good motion. You can do both arms. This is more like butterfly. And like I said, you can do the quick, alternating, higher turnover freestyle. But always shoulder, elbow high, hand below, straight through the channel. And like I said earlier, you can see your hand going all the way through. You never get caught doing this, which is what many people do in the pool. That's praying mantis. That's not swimming fundamental freestyle. You want to get that elbow always above the hand. Elbow above the hand at all times. So I was talking earlier about how we can move the hand and the head position in different ways. So as we're in the pulling motion, I can slide my hand more to the outside of the stretch cord and lead more with the pinky, and it keeps me turned in more. Or I can put my hand closer to the inside of the paddle of the stretch cord, and I'm facing more out. All depends on what you're trying to do through the channel. My hand's facing more that way, or I can face more this way. Again, sets up a different torque and a different motion and a different pull through with your freestyle motion. Again, what you want to work on. Do you want to get your hand more under you? Do you need to get your hand more to the side of you? All different things you can work on. Same as head position. We talked about neutral head position, but when we're swimming, oftentimes it's better to look in the opposite direction of where our arm is pulling through, because that's what we're doing when we're breathing, when we're swimming. So we want to get used to, maybe, if I breathe to that side, that I'm looking that way when this arm's pulling through. Again, to mimic the motion and the repetition of swimming as best you can. So how do we go through a swim workout given that we know how to pull on the stretch cords for now? So, or not for now, we do know how to pull on the stretch cords. So if you want to think about how many strokes you take per length, for example, I take about 12 to 13 strokes per length, a 25-yard freestyle. So that's 6 to 7 per arm. So if I would think 6 to 7 per arm, that's 12 to 14 for a 50. That's about 25, let's say, for 100 freestyle. So 25 pulls. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And so on. 25 pulls is 100 freestyle. It's the same wear and tear on the body. It takes about the same amount of time. Your rest for this, you want to increase a little bit because the resistance of StretchCordz is higher than you would in the pool. So you're muscularly fatiguing yourself a little bit differently, and you will need a little bit more rest. You can't just go on 5 to 7 seconds rest. You'll be exhausted after a couple hundred. But if you want to think of it that way, 1,000 pulls, if 25 pulls per arm is about 100, well, you just did a 4,000-yard swim if you just did sets or a total of 1,000 pulls. And so you can do your sets, which I put on the website, backwards from that. I oftentimes warm up with these green ones, for example, at, let's say, 5 times 20 or 5 times 25 to warm up, and then a couple sets of 100 each, and then a couple of faster sets with less recovery of 50 to 30 each, and then I'll cool it down or swim some sprints of 25 pulls or 20 pulls with short rest, or very fast pulls with extra rest, but sort of more explosive sort of sprints on the back end, and then do a nice easy warm down. And you would say, well, warm down, yes, I just get closer and make the motion, again, super easy, super low heart rate, low resistance. If I'm doing more explosive, powerful, shorter work, I step back further and really dig in, right? So you also have those choices of strokes. As I said, butterfly, and here we go. We also have opportunities to switch it out, to do some backstroke work. Yes, you're not pulling as high as you usually would, but you are getting a different motion in. You can do some chest work. Again, range of motion. You can work on your tricep. Again, hands open in order to get that most effective use for purposes of swimming. So there's a variety of ways you can switch up the motions so they're not completely torquing one freestyle motion the entire time. So important on the StretchCordz, which I don't have in my hand right now, is to remember that when we're swimming, we want that elbow, skin, shooting, pointing up. You cannot swim the proper form if it's down or sideways. This is not swimming properly with the proper leverage. This is swimming. And when you come in and put your hand into the mailbox, once you start, that elbow skin is facing up and you can pull through the channel where my elbow is always higher than my hand pulling through. Right? Too many people swim like this. It might feel and look as though my hand is below my elbow, but as soon as they start pulling through, this is no longer in a leveraged position. You got to get that shoulder extended out, high, extended, and pulling straight through. My elbow is always below my hand. Even here, even here, even here, even there. So that's StretchCordz. I mean, it's not ideal that we're not in the pool currently and that we can't go through a nice loosen up swim in a sunny pool. But for now, twice or 3 times a week, getting a chance to go through the motions of swimming with regards to StretchCordz is going to be quite helpful when we kick out on the other side of this. And for ideas with regards to different sets and the sets that I've been putting up on the website, those will help you to get some different inputs with regards to a swim workout or just to mix up the routine a little bit. Well, that ought to cover all the bases of StretchCordz for now. Be sure to check out AIMPcoaching.com for new workouts every week. Of course, like the video if you found it helpful, subscribe for future videos, and check out the Weekly Word podcast where I discuss all things ultra endurance. Get in touch with me directly via the website and links below. I'm Chris Hout, AIMP Coach. Thanks for watching, and remember, you don't need to be an elite athlete to train like one.